To understand this series better, don't forget to watch previous episodes. Claire wakes up in the night. She hears a baby's cry. Claire sits up with a confused and concerned expression on her face. She looks down and feels her stomach, noticing that she is not pregnant. She hears the cry again and starts into the jungle in a daze, looking for the source of the crying. Claire sees a light in the jungle and walks toward it, where she encounters Locke sitting at the table at which she received her psychic reading. The psychic's electric lamp is also present. As she approaches, Locke is drawing tarot cards from a deck one by one as he stares down at the table. The first card makes the sound of metal against metal, like a knife being unsheathed. Welcome to Review Recapped. Appreciate our efforts by subscribing and turning on the notifications, please. It means us a lot. Enjoy. As Locke finishes saying this, he looks up at her with a creepy expression on his face. He has one black eye and one white eye. Claire hears a baby's cry and runs into the jungle. She finds a crib with a plain mobile and pulls the blankets back, finding a thick dark pool of blood. She wakes up from this nightmare and she begins screaming. Claire stands in the cave screaming hysterically. Charlie grabs her to stop her screams and fighting as she wakes up. She eventually calms down. Charlie notices her bloody hands and asks what happened. Claire tells Jack about what happened during the night. In the morning, Jack sees to her hands, commenting that she must have had one hell of a nightmare to have dug their nails 1/4 of an inch into their palms. Claire implies that perhaps it was not a nightmare, but Jack shrugs the event off as sleepwalking and stress. He begins to ask questions about Claire's pregnancy. At the beach, Jack finds Kate watching the ocean. The two begin to flirt as Kate explains that she is sinking in the sand due to the effect of the waves. She remarks that Saeed has been gone for almost a week, but Jack says, "Something tells me he'll be okay." Then, with a concerned look on his face, he tells Kate that Claire will have the baby soon. Charlie and Claire sit in the jungle having a quiet moment with a cup of tea. They talk about her nightmare, and Charlie says that if she ever needs anything, he is there for her. She seems touched but does not reply, and Charlie interprets that as a hint that he should go. Charlie promises to protect Claire. Once again at night, Claire sees a man covering her mouth and stabbing her stomach with a needle. She wakes, screaming just like the night before. She says that someone attacked her, and Charlie and Hurley go to scout the area. Jack and Michael try to comfort her, but Claire is adamant that what she saw was real and that someone truly was trying to hurt her baby. The event leads Hurley to realize that none of the survivors has any idea of who their fellow survivors on the island are. He wants to start a census of who everyone is, where they live, in the caves or on the beach, and other information about them. Meanwhile, Charlie reassures Claire that he will watch over her all night. Jack doesn't believe Claire's claims. The next day, Hurley asks Locke questions about his background and his reason for traveling to Australia. John answers the questions, saying he came to Sydney looking for something and he has lived most of his life in Tustin, California. Further down the coast, Jack tells Charlie and Kate that he thinks Claire is merely dreaming. Charlie cannot believe he is suggesting that Claire is lying, but Jack attributes it to the stress and emotional imbalance of her pregnancy on the island. In the jungle, Hurley questions Ethan Rom. Ethan answers the questions, saying he is from Ontario. He asks what the census is for, and Hurley says he simply thought it would be a good idea. At the caves, Jack tries to tactfully tell Claire he thinks she should take some sedatives. Claire realizes Jack thinks she is making everything up. Packing her things, she decides to go back to the beach, which she thinks is safer than the caves. Charlie catches up with her, and escorts her for her protection, despite her telling him to leave her alone. Shannon mocks Hurley's attempts to make a census of the survivors. At the beach, Hurley has begun questioning Shannon, who is preparing to move to the caves. She answers his questions. Her name is Shannon Rutherford, she is 20, and her address is Craphole Island. She and Boone ask Hurley why he is making the list, and he tells them what may have happened to Claire. Shannon suddenly drops her bags, telling Boone they are now definitely not moving to the rape caves. Boone shrugs off Shannon's words and tells Hurley about the flight manifest. He says the names of the dead have been crossed off, so it should be a full roster of who is left on the island. Hurley asks who has it, and Boone replies, "Who do you think?" Immediately realizing who he means, Hurley heads to Sawyer's tent. Rather than demand the manifest, Hurley uses the calm approach of analyzing the con man, pointing out he could use the points amongst the islanders. The tactic is successful. Sawyer gives Hurley the manifest. Charlie tells Ethan to get Jack at once, as he thinks Claire is about to have the baby. As Claire and Charlie continue heading to the beach, Claire begins to feel contractions. Charlie offers to deliver the baby himself, but in his nervousness, he reveals that he is a recovering drug addict. Claire flatly tells him to get Jack at once. Charlie finds Ethan and tells him to find Jack immediately. Charlie returns to Claire and helps her calm down. She tells him about the psychic she once visited, and while she thinks he was wrong, Charlie says perhaps he knew of their fate. Claire becomes convinced Malkin put her on the flight knowing what would happen. She starts to feel better, and Charlie remembers that Jack told him about stress causing false labor. The relationship between the two is now completely mended, and they decide to head back to the caves. Claire stands frozen on the spot. There, Jack and Kate are shocked to see Saeed stumble in. Saeed is severely dehydrated and delirious, speaking of the French woman. He ominously adds that we are not alone before fainting. Before they can properly take care of him, Hurley shows up to talk about his list. He has cross-referenced all the names he collected with those on the flight manifest, and found that one of them was not on the ladder. That person was not on the plane. As Charlie and Claire begin their trek back, they are greeted by Ethan. Beginning to feel uncomfortable, they ask where Jack is. Ethan simply stares at Claire and a frightened look forms on her face. Episode 11. The survivors are shocked as Hurley frantically explains that Ethan was not on the plane. Jack notices that Charlie and Claire are missing, prompting Locke and him to run for the beach where they were headed. In the jungle, they find Claire's bag, along with scattered footprints indicating a struggle. Jack shouts for them, but Locke tells him to be quiet so as not to lose the element of surprise in their ensuing hunt. The pair starts following telltale markings left by Ethan. Locke discusses the concept of others on the island, and suggests returning to camp and forming a search party. Jack disagrees and heads off alone into the jungle. At the caves, Locke quickly recruits Kate and Boone, despite Shannon's reservations, but refuses Michael and Walt when they offer their services. Heading out, the group soon catches up with Jack, who has been unknowingly running in circles. Locke wants Jack to go back, him being the only doctor on the island, but he refuses, and the group moves out. Michael is annoyed at not being included. Back at the caves, Michael talks to Hurley about being left out of the main group. Walt joins the conversation, arguing that Locke can do many things so they should trust his judgment. This is not well received by Michael, who leaves his son with Hurley and heads south to look for Claire and Charlie. Locke marks his line of sight as Jack grows increasingly impatient. Jack wants to move immediately, but Locke needs time to find the trail and catch his bearings. Kate questions Jack's mood, and he admits that he never believed Claire's claims that someone was trying to hurt her. Locke suddenly shouts for Jack and shows that he has found the L from the late finger bands Charlie wears. Continuing through the jungle, they find the A pointing in one direction, but Locke also sees footprints heading off in another. Kate suggests that Ethan could be setting up a dummy trial. This causes everyone to question how she suddenly knows so much about tracking. With no way of knowing which direction is the right one, the group splits, with Locke leading Boone and Kate tracking with Jack. Walt chats with Sawyer. Back at the caves, Sawyer hears about the mission from Walt and suggests that Ethan might have simply lied about his name for the manifest. Walt says that it's stupid to lie about your name. Sawyer chuckles and asks Walt for his opinion. Walt thinks other people might live on the island, and supports his claims with Saeed's comments about hearing whispers in the jungle. The news that Saeed has returned causes Sawyer to take notice. Locke and Boone move on their path. Boone comments how on Star Trek the redshirts always got killed. He asks Locke what he did in the real world. Locke says he worked at a box company, but Boone does not believe him. On the other path, Kate tells Jack to slow down. She explains that she learned to track from her father, an ex-soldier in the army, with whom she used to hike and track deer. Ethan confronts Jack. At the caves, Saeed awakens to see Sawyer standing over him. Sawyer threatens Saeed but stops himself from carrying out his revenge when he hears about the French woman and her claims of others on the island. The mention of the whispering intrigues Sawyer. Deciding not to retaliate, Sawyer leaves, mentioning as he goes that he kept the signal fire burning while Saeed was away. Meanwhile, at the beach, Walt defeats Hurley at backgammon again, managing to correctly roll the required number several times. Walt accidentally reveals that he had another father, and Hurley soon leaves, but not before Walt reminds him that he owes him $20,000. Still searching, Locke follows a gut instinct trying to find Claire and Charlie. Boone talks about his life, working as part of his mother's wedding firm. Locke suggests Boone head back, but the young man refuses. As rain starts to fall, both teams carry on. Jack and Kate stumble on the tea from Charlie's bands, and Jack hears a distant scream. Though Kate does not hear it, Jack climbs up a small hill in the pouring rain. He slips and tumbles back to the ground below. Pulling himself together, he sees Ethan standing over him. Ethan threatens to kill one of his prisoners if Jack keeps following him. They fight, but Ethan easily overpowers the doctor and knocks him out. A few minutes later, Jack regains consciousness with Kate at his side. Kate tells him to sit, but Jack says he will not let Ethan do this, not again, and runs after him. Charlie is found hanging from a tree. Moments later, they find the final letter, E, only to see that it is on Charlie's hand and that he has been hanged from a tree by his neck. As Jack grabs him, Kate manages to cut him down, and Kate holds Charlie's hand as the doctor begins CPR. Kate begins to cry, but after many moments there is still no response from Charlie, while Jack continues to pound on Charlie's chest. Kate tries to get Jack to stop, which he does, before once again continuing, refusing to give up. This time, Charlie wakes up coughing as Jack and Kate cry with happiness. Charlie sits silently by the campfire. Back at the caves, Walt comments that Charlie has not spoken since Jack and Kate brought him back. Charlie sits silently. Jack promises to go back out for Claire the moment the sun comes up, and Charlie coldly says he does not remember anything. He ominously adds, they were after Claire all along. Meanwhile, a worried Shannon approaches Kate, telling her Locke and Boone have not returned yet. Out in the jungle, Boone concludes they are lost. He says he wants to go back, and when Locke tosses him a flashlight, he fails to catch it, and it falls. As it hits the ground, they hear a metallic clank, and Locke says it is something made of steel. Part of the plane? Boone asks, but Locke seems to think otherwise. The two begin to unearth a structure beneath the earth. In the jungle, Kate is in a tree picking fruit. After climbing down, she hears something moving in the bushes. Kate quickly throws a rock in the direction of the noise, hitting what turns out to be a stalking Sawyer. He comes out cursing and holding his knee where the rock hit, claiming he was only watching over her. They hear falling water nearby and follow the sound of a waterfall spring. Sawyer takes his shirt off and rushes into the water, encouraging Kate to follow. After some frolicking, they swim to the rocks, climbing up and diving back in. Underwater, they spot two dead bodies from the plane, strapped into their seats. When they surface, Sawyer decides to dive again to check the passengers' belongings. Kate, disgusted at the thought of raiding dead bodies, follows to stop him. However, she then notices a familiar Halliburton case trapped underneath one of the seats. As both emerge from the water, Kate asks Sawyer to help her fetch the case, claiming it is hers. They dive back down, and Sawyer retrieves the Halliburton case after some struggle and hands it to Kate. She seems puzzled at how to open it, leading Sawyer to realize the case is not hers. He takes it back to check her reaction. Kate acts indifferent and heads back to camp, leaving the case with him to avoid answering his questions about it. The survivors dragged luggage away from the increasing tide. Back at the camp, the survivors are busy retrieving luggage from the crash that was washed onto the beach by the tide. This is the first hint that something is special about it. Jack notes to Saeed that at the rate the tide is rising, the fuselage will soon be submerged. He says people should move to the caves. However, Saeed notes many survivors are worried about entering the jungle after Claire's kidnapping. Jack asks Saeed to take him to Rousseau to ask her more about the others she talked about, but Saeed expresses his doubts about Rousseau's sanity and debunks his account of hearing the others' whispers. As an alternative, Saeed agrees to try deciphering Rousseau's maps and notes, in the hopes of locating Claire and easing the suffering of the traumatized Charlie. Meanwhile, Boone lies to Shannon when she asks him about the time he spends with Locke, claiming that they are looking for Claire. He notes that both Shannon and himself are perceived as a joke among the survivors, but at least he is trying to contribute, while she is being useless. Saeed asks Shannon to help him translate the maps. At night, Kate sees Sawyer heading back to his tent with the Halliburton case. She waits for him to fall asleep, then slips in and tries to steal the case. However, Sawyer feels her movement and grabs her. Kate attempts to fight back, fails, and then demands the case from Sawyer, who refuses. The next day, Saeed approaches the sunbathing Shannon, asking her to help him translate the French notations on Rousseau's maps. Though she initially suspects it to be a trick put up by Boone, she reluctantly agrees to help. Michael and Hurley pass by Sawyer and mock his failing attempts of picking the lock on the Halliburton case. Michael then suggests using force and impact to open the case. In the jungle, Locke and Boone continue their attempts to open the hatch using the axe Boone smuggled. At the beach, Rose tries to help Charlie snap out of his depression by asking him to help remove her luggage. Sawyer trying to open the Halliburton case. Later in the jungle, Sawyer follows Michael's advice by hitting the case on some rocks several times, but the case still refuses to open. Frustrated, he climbs up a tree and throws the case down. Again it fails to open. While he is still up the tree, Kate suddenly rushes in and picks up the case from the ground, then runs away with it. Sawyer soon catches up with her, gets the case back, and makes Kate a proposition. He promises to give her the case, on the condition she tells him what is inside. Kate again refuses to talk and lets him leave with it. Back at Saeed's tent, Shannon works on translating the map notations. She is disappointed to find the job involves math, and doubts she will be able to help. Rose comforts Charlie over Claire's kidnapping. As her last resort, Kate turns to Jack, who is at the caves, asking Son about the herbs she is gathering to use as a medicine for headaches. Kate reveals to Jack that the Halliburton case belongs to the U.S. Marshal. When Jack asks about its contents, she adds that it contains 4 9mm guns with a few boxes of ammo, some money, and the Marshal's personal belongings. Kate then tells Jack that Sawyer now possesses the case and will soon open it and have the guns. She also reveals that the key to the case is in the buried Marshal's wallet. Jack suspects that Kate has hidden motives and asks her if anything else in the case is of importance to her. Kate says she only fears the guns will fall into Sawyer's hands. Jack, skeptical, then tells her that he will only help if they open the case together, to which Kate agrees. Kate and Jack head to where Mars is buried and dig up his corpse. Kate volunteers to reach in and get the wallet, and after obtaining it she jumps quickly out of the grave. When she opens the wallet, she acts disgusted because of the maggots inside and throws it on the ground. Jack picks it up again, and looks inside but finds no key. Kate acts surprised, but Jack sees through her con and bitterly praises her attempts to hide the key while distracting him. Jack then grabs her hand and demands she opens it. Kate opens her hand, revealing the key inside. Kate tries to explain, but the angered Jack refuses to listen and walks away with the key. Jack forces Kate to open her hand, revealing the key inside. Meanwhile, Saeed finds Shannon's translation of the French notations to be of no sense, asking if she's sure, holding no relation to the written equations. The notations added by Rousseau are a repeated rambling of references to moon and silver sparkled sea. However, it all seems somehow familiar to Shannon. Saeed declares that the time they have spent was a mistake. This causes Shannon to feel frustrated with Saeed and herself as well, and she leaves in tears. Elsewhere, Jack approaches Sawyer and asks him for the case. When Sawyer initially protests, Jack threatens to take him off his medication after inducing fear in him about the possible complications. Sawyer reluctantly hands Jack the case and asks him if Kate revealed what's inside. Jack, however, lies and says no. Before giving him the case, Sawyer warns Jack that Kate is lying about whatever reasons she told him. Back at the caves, Kate and Jack open the case together, as he insisted. Jack is amazed to find that the contents are as Kate described, but with the addition of a yellow envelope marked personal effects, which he hands to Kate. Kate opens the envelope and pulls out a small toy airplane. When Jack demands that she tells him the truth about it, Kate initially says that it belonged to the man she loved, but after a struggle between them, she eventually cries out that it belonged to the man she killed. Shocked, Jack takes the case along with the guns and walks away. Rose and Charlie pray near the campfire. That night on the beach, Rose continues to help Charlie come to terms with Claire's kidnapping. When Charlie questions her belief of getting reunited with her missing husband, Rose explains, there's a fine line between denial and faith, which she feels is much better on her side. Charlie, in tears, asks her to help him, but Rose replies that she is not of such power, and then holds his hand while making a prayer for him. Shannon singing La Mer to Saeed. At the same time, Shannon approaches Saeed and tells him a story of her French boyfriend's son, Laurent, who repeatedly watched a French-dubbed cartoon about a fish, Finding Nemo. The cartoon had a song with matching lyrics to Rousseau's notations. When Saeed asks her about the song, Shannon starts to sing Charles Trenet's La Mer. As she sings, Boone watches them in anger from behind a tree. Passing by them, Jack heads to the caves with the case but stops to look at Kate, who gazes at the fire with a face covered in tears. As he leaves, Kate starts to play with the toy airplane and the episode ends here. Hope you enjoyed it. Watch out for the next episodes to see what happens next.